One of the tips I wanted to show was how to go about adding designs from your previous versions of Xara that you may have bought in the past. And I'm going over here to, this would have been the Pro version 10, going to my templates folder in English, and I'm telling it it wants to create a new index, and there it goes. So now when I go to my design gallery, it's going to have those templates that were included in that previous version of Xara. Getting started with the What's New section of this, let's talk about some of the new brush effects and controls and things that you have. But do keep in mind, of course, you have always been able to go over to TalkGraphics and Xara Xone and download a lot of different brushes that have been created by other artists. Now this is what they call an acrylic one, which looks just like, I would think, a blob of acrylic paint that you've laid down there on your canvas and smear around a bit. But the one I've been having a lot of fun, which is why I opened up my little generic face template, is the hair one. Now if I go in here and of course change to my shape tool, now I could sit here and I could play around with the controls on this to shape my hair the way I want it to be. And I'm not going to mess around with it too much here. I'm just showcasing this. And then I move it into where I want it to be on my little face. And of course I can go in and change the color of the lines and other things. But as you could see, you could have an awful lot of fun with this in making illustrations. The next item I wanted to talk about was the transparency tool, which has had some substantial improvements and changes, which is going to be a lot of fun. I have a little clip art that I brought in from Xara's library, set against a rather simple little spooky scene here. And let's just work with the original item, and we're just going to change it. We're going to keep it in the flat mode. But if we change it to the hard light, you could see that we're getting a rather substantial color shift going on. Although you could still see the background, and as I move it around, you could see it's still showing through to the background, which is really nice spooky effect. But now let's look at some of these other ones, which are not going to be that obvious what's going on. And the reason why is because these are meant to go with one object in front of another. So let's just select our object and make a copy in place. Let's put them, well, I know it. Well, we'll put them up there so it's a little less background stuff coming in the way. And we're going to make a copy right in place on top. And now with that top one selected, let's go in and we'll put in the overlay. And now you could see where I'm getting a rather different looking pumpkin now in my one that's set over the top. So let's undo that and bring him. Yeah, I still got my top. So let's go back to the transparency tool and let's try one of these other ones that wasn't obvious what it was doing before. Now that's not that pronounced of a change. Luminosity is your, of course, your gray levels and things, your light levels. So you could see it sort of makes it into a gray scale version. So let's just put him back on top and go back and let's change it to the color. And now let's select it and move it. And look at that. Wow. Isn't that neat? Well, I'm sure you're going to have a lot of fun with this one. So please enjoy. The other thing I thought I would mention while we're still on this topic of drawing tools and so forth is that we could take and open up a new document, this one being a web page type, and I've just copied all my background stuff over there, and now I can start copying over some of these. Well, let's turn those layers so I'm not getting them, and I'm getting my, I want my pumpkins. So let's grab my pumpkins, and I can bring them over here, and I could start doing some animation effects. Now I have to arrange them to the layer and bring them in front of everything else. So let's just keep bringing them up here. There we go. And now, so I could sit here and make an either a standard sort of animation, or I could do mouse over effects with them. This version of Xara does support more mouse over effects. So let's just see what we could see here. Let's see, we want to put in our web animation. So here is some of the different things we can play around with in our mouse over effects. And keep in mind that, you know, this is all going to be available to you, and you can, most of them, of course, take advantage of them in standard animation things too. But then this is going to save you, obviously, a great deal of time in doing this kind of effect. And you can export this into a web page document, which is our next topic. Let's step outside of Xara for just a moment and start talking about its role in the responsive web design of today. Websites today are built usually from a bunch of text that's stored into a database along with image files that are then combined either using, in my case, PHP and HTML5 and CSS and JavaScript into a finished web page that is then delivered to the viewer on whatever device it is that they are using. And that is some very simplified of how modern web design is done. Xara's templates, which are wonderful, please don't get me wrong on that, they do, however, output as standard HTML pages, usually at the standard HTML5 coding. This means that they will have all the images saved out as separate files, along with any of the scripts that are meant to support any of the visual effects that you have included in there. And the pages themselves will contain all of the appropriate references to any of those images and scripts, which in other words gets you pretty far along the way with what you need when you're building a web page. Obviously, if you're doing it in the traditional manner. of just standard web pages. With someone like me that is building PHP style templates, I cannot use them as is. But then again, they still are incredibly handy. And before moving further, I do also want to mention that the CSS code in particular has been greatly improved in support of the responsive design. Well, I don't know if I want to call it standards, but the concepts, so as to minimize your repetition of, coding and so forth, and to deliver the best possible view to the viewer regardless of what type of device it is that they are using. Okay, now we're back over here in Xara, and I am going to talk about how I do make extensive use of Xara in doing my web design work. This is an example of a style tile I actually made back in 2012, which was for the Cbug website, which unfortunately we're in the process of shutting down. But you could see it has the grids, which I use in the background. And this is a style tile is not meant to look like a web page, which I need to emphasize first off. But it is to help me establish and showcase for my customers how different things that will be of use in their web pages are going to look. For example, here are the color suggestions. These are some tab treatments that I was suggesting, and the typefaces that I had suggested to be used, and so forth. In this way, it gets me further along in the process of defining what the theme actually will be. That is, what kind of colors are going to be used, what kind of fonts are going to be used, and also what specific sort of elements, for example, different blocks and that, how they will be styled. And I also do want to point out that this is something that has been coming along quite nicely for quite a few versions now of Xara, where they have built-in support for all of the Google fonts, which of course really help you in customizing the look of a web page without adding a lot of overhead, because Google fonts are intended to be working on nearly every type of browser and device out there. One of the other things I wanted to talk about here in Xara is, of course, all of their wonderful web templates and so forth that can really help you out with getting things ready. Now, keep in mind that some of these are included free with your package that you buy, as long as you, of course, download the content and stuff that goes with it. But others will be included in for example, this one, I'm not sure if this is included in my package or not, but it looks like it is. So when I open that now, I have this is what is called, of course, a responsive web design. And if you don't know more about that, by all means, feel free to click on that to learn more about it. Now, what I wanted to point out, though, is, say, for example, you're dealing with a client that doesn't want to pay for a total custom work design, but they do like, say, for example, this one has a nice splashy graphic up here, and they want something of that nature. And so that what you want to do, you'll notice up here it opened up the main website section for me, which is actually, as you could see, several different pages, as well as the mobile versions of it. But what we can do over here with our grid setup is, say, for example, I'm just going to use one very simple element out of this, which is our little menu bar down there, and I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to bring that over here into what would be my framework. Whoops, And I'm grabbing the wrong thing. And let me grab that again. And it doesn't want to let me do that. Okay. Well, let's see what layers have I got here. Yeah. Here we go. Now this one should be on the background, and let's lock that. So now it's not going to move on me. So now, here we go. Now I can sit here and play around with my little menu bar. Like I said, say we have a client that really likes some of the elements that you see here in this page, and the idea is put forth, but they don't want that particular color set. So you'll notice when I brought it over here in Xara, it brought over the themes, which as you could see is sort of a gray background. Well, all I have to do is go over here and click on this and modify that particular theme color to, well, do they want a blue or do they want a green? Well, let's go with a green. So if I just click on there anywhere in my greens, now I have suddenly completely changed the appearance of that whole menu bar by just changing that one theme color. When you are done with your website in whatever form it is you want it will take, then you are ready to export it. Because keep in mind, as I said, I am writing PHP style templates. And I have already done this for this example here into a folder on my desktop, which as you could see here, it put all of my index, my various HTML files, and if I flip over here to that folder, you could see it also put in there all of my scripts in images and so forth. So now that you have it there, what I am doing now, insofar as creating Drupal websites, is I am using Oracle's VirtualBox with it's a Linux Mint right now that is running inside of that, and that is where I am doing all of my Drupal development, because this helps me to better isolate it from whatever Windows is doing. I am not going to be spending a great deal of time talking about the methodology on this at this time. I'm just explaining what I'm doing is I need to get these files over here into my Linux setup. And what I have decided to do, simply because it is so much easier to do than any other means, is to, once I have them exported here to a folder on my desktop, I then, inside my Google Drive, I set up a folder for those, and I save them there to my Google Drive. And then now that I'm over here inside my Linux server, I can open them up here through my Google Drive. So now I have access to all of my files and so forth, and I can go on with what I need to do insofar as writing my PHP template. I wanted to close out this video with talking very quickly about some of the amazing, I guess you would call it, Xara community resources one has out there. There is, of course, their official YouTube channel. Then there is the Xara Xone site, where you can find, in addition to all the wonderful tutorials you have over here, you have some other ones over here, plus all kinds of free stuff over here, and artwork. And even better, there is the TalkGraphics website. And I will be posting the URLs for all these in the description below. But this is where you can interact with other Xara users, get questions answered about problems you may be having, and of course exchange information and tips. By all means, do check out, especially on Xara Xone and on TalkGraphics, all of the wonderful stuff. There's textures, there's brushes, there's seamless tiles. I mean, just about anything that one would want to make your life easier with using Xara, you can find it here. So do by all means check all these things out. And thanks for watching. And do like and subscribe. Bye for now.